Have you ever felt the weight of a grudge pressing down on your soul? That gnawing ache in your chest every time you remember what they did, how they hurt you, betrayed you, abandoned you? It's almost like dragging a chain behind you, each link forged from the pain they inflicted. And yet, we're told to forgive and forget. Just let it go, they say. But how do you forgive something that still burns inside you? How do you erase scars carved into your very being? Society pushes this idea that good people forgive effortlessly, that kindness means turning the other cheek every time. But let's be real. Does forgiveness feel natural when your wounds are still fresh? Do you feel at peace when someone who shattered you walks free without consequence? There's a reason we struggle to forgive. It's because some wounds run too deep, and pretending otherwise only prolongs the pain. We're often told to be kind to everyone, no matter what. But what if that kindness is destroying us? What if our endless giving is leaving us empty, drained, and resentful? There is a cost to kindness when it's given without boundaries. When we allow toxic people to take and take, we end up depleted. Forgiveness does not mean being a doormat. It does not mean enduring repeated harm just to be seen as good. Forgiveness is not about excusing the inexcusable. It's not about making someone else feel better while we suffer in silence. It's about reclaiming our power, choosing what deserves our energy, and releasing the grip that pain has on us. But here's the truth. You do not owe forgiveness to everyone, especially not to those who show no remorse, no growth, no accountability. Carrying anger and resentment can be exhausting. But so is forcing yourself to forgive when you're not ready. Have you ever tried to rush healing because people around you said you should? Just move on, they insist. But they don't live in your skin. They don't feel the echoes of betrayal when the world goes quiet at night. Forgiveness must come on your terms, if it comes at all. How often have you told yourself, it wasn't that bad, just to make peace with what happened? How many times have you minimized your pain because you thought holding on to it made you weak? But denying your pain doesn't erase it. It lingers, buries itself deep, and resurfaces in ways you never expect. Self-doubt, trust issues, emotional exhaustion. The truth is, you don't have to pretend it didn't hurt to move forward. We think closure comes from confrontation, from hearing someone say, I'm sorry, I see the damage I caused. But some people will never say it. Some will never acknowledge the destruction they left behind. So what then? Do we let their silence keep us prisoner, or do we find our own way to peace? Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision to stop waiting for an apology that may never come. Forgetting is a luxury, one that trauma rarely allows. The brain remembers pain to protect us, so why do we shame ourselves for remembering? Why do we expect our hearts to delete experiences as if they never happened? But you don't have to forget to forgive. In fact, remembering is part of healing. It's how we learn, how we grow, how we set boundaries so we never find ourselves in that same darkness again. Strength is not pretending something didn't hurt. It's acknowledging the pain and still moving forward. Strength is not blind forgiveness. It's choosing who deserves access to your heart. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say, I release this pain, but I do not invite you back into my life. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means reclaiming your own story. So where do we begin? How do we navigate the impossible task of forgiving what we can't forget? First, we stop lying to ourselves. We stop pretending we're okay when we're not. We stop forcing forgiveness before we're ready. We start by acknowledging the depth of our wounds, the weight of our scars, and the truth that healing isn't linear. And most importantly, we give ourselves permission to heal in our own time, in our own way. Pain is a way of embedding itself deep into our souls, lingering long after the moment of hurt is past. We think time will erase it, that distance will dull the sharp edges of memory. But some wounds refuse to fade. They resurface when we least expect them, triggered by a familiar scent, a song, or even the way someone looks at us. We tell ourselves we've moved on, but suddenly, the past rushes back like a storm we thought had passed. And then comes the guilt. Guilt for still feeling the hurt, for not being able to forgive as easily as the world says we should. But why do we pressure ourselves to be okay before we truly are? We live in a world that idolizes the idea of unconditional kindness. We're told that the bigger person always forgives, that strong people let go without looking back. But what if that narrative is flawed? What if kindness, when given without discernment, is actually self-destruction in disguise? How many times have we forgiven people who were never sorry? How many times have we given second chances to those who never deserved a first? And at what cost? Burnout, resentment, exhaustion. We drain ourselves dry in the name of being good, only to realize that kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all. It's self-betrayal. Forgiveness is often framed as a gift we give to others, but what if it's really about us? Not about making peace with them, but about making peace with ourselves. What if true forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing, but about recognizing that we deserve freedom from the pain they caused? Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. But here's the part no one talks about. Forgiveness doesn't mean you invite them back into your life. It doesn't mean you act as if nothing happened. It doesn't mean they are entitled to your trust. Sometimes we mistake forgiveness for reconciliation, as if one cannot exist without the other. But there are people who should never have access to us again. People who have shown us, time and time again, that they are not capable of growth. And yet we hesitate. We hesitate because we're afraid of being seen as cold, as unkind, as unforgiving. But let me ask you this. When did protecting yourself become a crime? When did prioritizing your own well-being become selfish? The hardest truth to accept is that some people will never give us the closure we crave. They will never admit their wrongs, never offer an apology, never acknowledge the pain they caused. And that realization, it hurts. It stings like an open wound. We wait for them to fix what they broke, to take responsibility, to show remorse. But sometimes waiting for closure is just another way of holding ourselves hostage to the past. What if the closure we need isn't something they can give? What if it's something we have to create for ourselves? There comes a point where we have to decide that our healing is more important than their apology, that we can release the pain, not because they deserve it, but because we do. That doesn't mean we forget. It doesn't mean we pretend it never happened. It means we choose to carry the lesson, not the burden. Because at some point, carrying that weight becomes too much. At some point, we have to decide that we are more than what was done to us. But here's where it gets complicated. What if the person we need to forgive is ourselves? What if the deepest wounds are the ones we inflicted on our own hearts? We beat ourselves up for trusting the wrong people, for ignoring the red flags, for staying too long or leaving too soon. We replay our mistakes over and over, wishing we could rewrite history. And in that cycle of self-blame, we become our own worst enemy. Forgiving ourselves is often the hardest part of healing because, unlike others, we can't walk away from ourselves. How do we extend to ourselves the same grace we struggle to give others? How do we learn to say, I did the best I could with what I knew at the time? The truth is, we cannot heal while we are at war with ourselves. Self-forgiveness is not about ignoring our mistakes. It's about learning from them, about recognizing that growth often comes through pain. It's about realizing that we are allowed to evolve, that we are not defined by the moments we regret. So, where do we go from here? How do we start the process of forgiving what we cannot forget? First, we acknowledge the truth, all of it. We stop sugarcoating what happened, stop minimizing our pain just to make it easier to carry. We admit that some wounds may never fully close, and that's okay. Healing is not about erasing the past. It's about no longer allowing it to control our future. It's about reclaiming the parts of ourselves that we lost in the process. The journey is not linear. Some days we'll feel free, like the past has finally loosened its grip. Other days it will come back in waves, threatening to drown us in memories we thought we had outgrown. And that's okay. Healing is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about choosing every single day to keep moving forward, even when the past tries to pull us back. Because in the end, forgiveness is not about them. It's about us. And we deserve peace. Pain changes us. It shapes the way we see the world, the way we trust, the way we love. And sometimes it hardens us in ways we don't even realize. We wake up one day and find that we no longer smile as freely, that we second-guess people's intentions, that we hold back parts of ourselves just in case someone decides to walk away again. We call it being careful, being wise, being strong. But deep down, we know the truth. We're just trying to protect what's left of us. And maybe that's necessary. Maybe after everything, we have to build walls before we can figure out how to let the right people in. But what happens when those walls become cages? What happens when the protection we created turns into isolation? We think we're keeping the pain out, but sometimes we're just keeping ourselves locked inside. There comes a point where we have to ask, are we protecting ourselves, or are we imprisoning ourselves in the fear of being hurt again? Forgiveness, real forgiveness, is not just about letting go of anger toward others. It's about freeing ourselves from the fear that pain left behind. The idea of being kind to everyone sounds beautiful in theory. It paints this picture of a world where everyone is deserving of our love, our trust, our patience. But in reality, not everyone deserves access to our kindness. Not everyone should be allowed in our space, in our minds, in our hearts, because kindness, when given without limits, can be dangerous. It can leave us exhausted, drained, taken for granted. It can make us think that our value comes from what we give instead of who we are. And that's a lie we can't afford to believe. We are not required to keep giving to those who only take. We do not have to set ourselves on fire to keep someone else warm, yet so many of us do. We push past our own limits, convince ourselves that if we just love harder, if we just try more, they will change, that they will see our worth, that they will finally treat us the way we deserve. But how many times have we sacrificed our own peace for people who never even said thank you? How many times have we been loyal to those who never once protected our hearts the way we protected theirs? Forgiveness is not a free pass. It is not a reset button that erases the past, and it is certainly not an invitation for someone to hurt us again. Real forgiveness comes with wisdom. It comes with learning. It comes with boundaries. It says, I release the anger, but I will not repeat the past. It says, I refuse to let what you did define me, but I will not give you another chance to break me. Because at some point, the lesson is not in holding on, it's in knowing when to let go. Letting go does not mean the pain disappears overnight. It does not mean we wake up one day and suddenly feel nothing. No, healing is a process, a slow unraveling of the past, a constant choosing of peace over resentment. Some days it will feel like progress. Other days it will feel like you are back at square one, and that's okay. The path to forgiveness is not straight. It is messy, filled with setbacks, with moments of weakness, with nights where the past feels just as heavy as it did the day it happened. But every time we choose to move forward, even just a little, we are breaking free. We must stop believing that forgiveness means we have to be okay with what happened. Some things are unforgivable. Some betrayals cut so deep that no amount of time can ever make them right. And that's the part no one talks about. The truth is, we don't forgive for them. We forgive for us. We forgive so that their actions no longer control our emotions. We forgive so that our hearts don't stay trapped in a moment that no longer exists. We forgive so that we can breathe again. But we must also be careful not to mistake forgiveness for forced reconciliation. We do not owe anyone a seat at our table just because we have chosen to release the weight of their actions. We can forgive and still say, I never want you near me again. We can forgive and still block their number. We can forgive and still walk away, because forgiveness is about our peace, not their comfort. So what happens now? What do we do with the memories that refuse to fade? What do we do when the anger still lingers, when the pain still feels fresh? When we don't know if we will ever truly move on? We remind ourselves that healing is not about forgetting, it's about reclaiming. It's about taking back the parts of ourselves that were lost in the wreckage. It's about standing up and saying, this pain does not own me anymore. Because at the end of the day, forgiveness is not about pretending the past never happened. It's about making sure it does not steal our future. Thanks.